On November 14, 1944, the American battleship USS Iowa was sailing to North Africa with a top-secret cargo on board, U.S. President Franklin Delano Roosevelt. FDR was heading to the Tehran Conferences, and his trip was supposed to be a secret. However, keeping a low profile must not have been on the president's mind when he personally requested a demonstration of his Navy's firepower in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. What was supposed to be a patriotic display for FDR's delight nearly turned to disaster when an accompanying destroyer, the USS William D Porter, almost killed its own president. Even though Roosevelt had ordered the guns blazing, the secrecy of the mission still called for radio silence, and the demonstration quickly devolved into one of chaos and miscommunication. It all culminated when William D Porter accidentally fired a fully armed torpedo towards the president's ship. When made aware of the predicament, Roosevelt allegedly requested to be wheeled over to the side of the Iowa so that he could see the torpedo heading right for him. Early days. During World War II, U.S. Navy destroyers became a critical part of ocean conflicts. The Fletcher-class destroyers were among the most popular, and 175 were produced. These formidable foes exceeded expectations when performing every task asked of them, including serving in anti-submarine warfare, anti-aircraft warfare, and surface action. All of this was achieved thanks to her armament that included 10 fast-running torpedoes that carried 500-pound warheads, as well as anti-aircraft artillery weapons. The USS William D Porter, one of the many Fletcher-class destroyers built for World War II, was commissioned on July 6, 1943, under Lieutenant Commander Wilfred Walter. It departed from her base at Orange, Texas, soon after. Following several stops along the continental United States, the William D Porter and her crew headed towards Guantanamo Bay in late July for a shakedown, a series of endurance tests for new military vessels. After her successful performance, the William D Porter traveled back to the mainland, conducting several battle exercises with other ships from the Atlantic Fleet through September and October. The destroyer was then assigned its first official World War II expedition, a secret rendezvous with the USS Iowa across the Atlantic. The night before setting sail, the battleship accidentally hit the sides of a sister ship, tearing down essential equipment with her anchor. This would only be the beginning of a series of misfortunes that would follow her everywhere she went. On November 12, 1943, the destroyer finally departed. A 4-ship convoy consisting of the Iowa, William D Porter, and 2 other destroyers set sail towards Africa. The convoy was ordered to maintain total silence while crossing the Atlantic, as the waters were filled with German U-boats. However, a massive explosion shook the 4-vessel fleet not long into the journey, and all crews immediately began anti-submarine protocol. As the chaos continued, Commander Walter contacted the other ship's captains and awkwardly admitted that a depth charge from his own vessel had fallen off the stern. As it didn't have the safety lock in place, it detonated upon crashing into the rough seas. The blast caused a giant wave that smashed into the destroyer, throwing everything that wasn't securely tightened overboard, including a sailor who was never seen again. Still, there was a critical asset that needed to be protected at all costs. As the convoy made its way to North Africa, the Iowa carried a precious and top-secret cargo: President Franklin D. Roosevelt. Don't shoot the president. President Roosevelt planned to attend the Cairo and Tehran Conferences to discuss a possible second front against Germany and Japan. On November 14th, as the convoy was sailing east of Bermuda, FDR decided to test the Iowa's defenses and overall performance in a series of drill exercises. The crew then launched weather balloons to simulate anti-aircraft targets and fired over 100 guns in an attempt to shoot them down. Not wanting to be left out of the fun and seeking some kind of redemption, Commander Walter sent his men to their battle stations and ordered them to shoot at the missed targets drifting towards their ship. To further impress the president, the flotilla also performed practice torpedo drills against the Iowa from 6,000 yards away. Sailors Lawton Dawson and Tony Fazio were responsible for removing the explosive charges from the torpedoes, and after doing it for the first 2, Dawson forgot to remove the primer from the third one. At 2:36 p.m., just as the torpedo officer gave the firing signal, an armed torpedo launched across the sea towards the Iowa, with President Roosevelt, his staff, and almost 3,000 crew members on board. Chaos ensued for the next 5 minutes as Walter tried to come up with the best way to contact the Iowa without breaking the silence order and tell them the truth before it was too late. His first idea was to use signal lamps to warn the battleship. However, the nervous officer in charge of the signals made a mistake and relayed the wrong message. Walter had no other choice, and his crew finally decided to break the silence. The Iowa's radio operator then replied, quote, "Why are you breaking radio silence? Identify yourself." Back on deck, a wheelchair-bound FDR feared an assassination attempt and allegedly requested to be moved near the railing. The president and his staff then caught a glimpse of the approaching torpedo. According to eyewitnesses, the Secret Service even drew their guns and aimed them at the target, hoping to blow it up in time. However, the radio operation team soon noticed the missile, and Iowa pulled a full-speed reverse, escaping the torpedo just in the nick of time. At 2:40 p.m., the torpedo exploded as it struck heavy waves created by the Iowa's increasing speed. Following the incident, all of the Iowa's guns were aimed at the William D Porter, and Walter was asked if a rogue German or Japanese agent had forced them to fire the torpedo. However, as the questioning continued, the ashamed commander confessed to his mistakes again. A trial. After the disastrous participation of the William D Porter in the silent mission, the ship earned the derogatory nickname Willie D. By then, the ship and her crew had quite a reputation. As a result of the friendly fire incident, other Navy ships would often greet the destroyer by raising their hands and yelling, quote, "Don't shoot, we're Republicans." Upon returning from the mission, the entire crew was arrested and sent to Bermuda to face trial for their actions. During the hearing, torpedo man Lawton Dawson confessed that he was the culprit for forgetting to remove the primer on the third torpedo tube, and that he tried to conceal the evidence by throwing it off the destroyer's side. Dawson was then sentenced to 14 years of hard labor, and President Roosevelt intervened with the rest of the crew, asking for no further punishment. The crew's arrest was the first instance in United States naval history in which an entire ship's personnel was submitted to trial. Another mistake. After the William D Porter left the embarrassing incident behind, she traveled to the Aleutian Islands to serve simple patrol missions before being reassigned to another area in the Pacific. Throughout December of 1943, the vessel and her crew worked with Task Force 94 at the Dutch Harbor Naval Operating Base in Fort Mears in mainland Alaska. However, on the night of December 31st, Willie D's reputation took another hit. While celebrating a New Year's party hosted by the base commandant, a drunk crew member fired one of the destroyer's 5-inch guns. The shell traveled across the base and landed on the commandant's front yard, obliterating his family's flower garden, but hurting no one. Although the incident wasn't Commander Walter's fault, his lack of leadership and management skills could no longer be denied. Then, in the spring of 1944, Walter was finally replaced with Commander Charles M. Keyes. The crew sailed to the Aleutian Islands and participated in the Philippines campaign with Keyes, doing a remarkable job during submarine patrols and as an escort for other vessels. Okinawa. With a new commander in charge and a renewed reputation, the Navy allowed Willie D to participate in the critical Battle of Okinawa. However, during the early part of the battle, the ship accidentally strafed the USS Luce, a fellow Fletcher-class destroyer. Despite the mission, William D. Porter made up for the damage and excelled during the battle. Between March 25th and April 1st, the vessel provided anti-aircraft and anti-submarine protection to ships operating in the Kerama Islands. The destroyer was then reassigned to Task Force 54 as part of Rear Admiral Morton L. Deyo's gunfire and covering force, and she supported the troops conquering Okinawa by providing anti-submarine and anti-aircraft defenses for larger warships and minesweepers. From April 1st to May 5th, the Willie D expended over 8,500 shells at shore targets and enemy aircraft during the almost endless aerial attacks on the invading forces. As she downed several aircraft, she would prove once and for all that the destroyer and her crew were capable of greatness. The end of the Willie D. The destroyer stood picket duty between May 5th and June 9th, warning the rest of the fleet of approaching enemy attacks and vectoring interceptors out to meet the attackers. But its luck finally ran out on June 10th, 1945. At 8:15 a.m., a malfunctioning Aichi D-3A dive bomber, the first Japanese aircraft to raid American targets in World War II, suddenly dropped out of the sky and zoomed straight towards the ship. The crew first attempted to fire at the approaching aircraft. However, after missing several times, Commander Keyes ordered to sail away as quickly as possible. After successfully evading the kamikaze, Keyes and the crew sighed with relief as they watched it slam into the water and disappear. However, they didn't notice that the Fletcher-class destroyer ended up directly beneath the explosive-laden aircraft. As the Aichi D-3A reached the bottom of the ship, the bomber exploded, lifting the vessel out of the water. As the ship whammed back down, several rooms lost power and fires broke out all over the vessel. The crew then spent hours trying to extinguish the flames, but the staff had no choice but to evacuate once the Willie D began to keel over. Only 12 minutes after the entire crew abandoned the ship safely, the William D Porter keeled over to starboard and sank, putting an end to the vessel's 2-year-long career. Still, despite her poor reputation and legendary mistakes, the destroyer earned 4 battle stars for her service in World War II. Thank you for watching Dark Seas, one of the newest additions to the Dark Documentaries channels. Don't forget to subscribe to all of them, and turn on your notifications to be the first to know of our newest content.